Hi everybody, this is Miss Huval. The video we're going to do today is for English 2 Honors. It is on Chapter 6 of Night, which is from page 85, I'm looking at it backwards, 85 to 97 in your book. If you're on the PDF, you ought to be able to scroll down to where you see page 85 in your book. Alright, in Chapter 6, we are looking at the death march. They leave Buna on a death march. And I know you've heard of a death march before, but once you read this, and you should have read this already by the time you look at this video, this is not a summary, it's more of an analysis. It's not going to make much sense to you if you don't know what happens in Chapter 6. But, so pause me now if you haven't read, go read, read, and come back. Right, so as I said, we're talking about this death march, and I wanted to make sure you understood why they were marching, because I'm not real sure that it was clear in the book, and I think he kind of assumes that people understand that. So they're leaving Auschwitz-Buna, that compound, which is in Poland, because the Russians are headed their way from this side, and from the other side, the Americans are heading their way. So they're on the run, basically. And their territory is shrinking. All this territory that they had gained, they're losing because the Red Army is taking it back. So that's why they're on the march. They didn't have time to do selections to liquidate the camp in the way that Hitler might have liked to by killing everyone. They didn't have time for those exterminations, and so they take everybody on the road. So let's talk about where they go. How long it takes. Let's get a grip on the whole setting real quick. So if you remember, they leave at night. So there's that motif of night coming back. They leave at night because they don't want to be detected by anyone who might be in the villages that they march through and march by, nor do they want to be detected by planes flying overhead, either Russian or American. So traveling at night affords them that little bit of secrecy that they're clinging to. Now, they leave at night. They spend the next day in the brick factory. Ironic that they end up in a brick factory because when they left Saget, that's exactly where they thought they were going. Sad irony, but irony nonetheless. They leave that night again. They travel all throughout the night and the day, and they end up at Gliwice. So that's about a day and a half. It says that they were at Gliwice for 3 days, and the chapter ends with them boarding a train headed farther in towards Germany. Okay, they're going to end up at Buchenwald. It doesn't tell you that yet, but they're going to end up in Buchenwald when they get on the train. So just a couple of interesting things that I hope jumped out at you. The number of people who fit on the train, 100. Remember, when they left Saget, there were 80 people, and they were packed in like sardines, and now they can fit 100. That tells you that this condition, physical condition, has deteriorated quite some, quite a large amount. They were so skinny they could fit 100 people in each one. And you'll note that the whole time they're on this death march, they're not fed. Elie had brought with him 2 crusts of bread, and that's what he had to eat on this almost 5-day journey. Freezing cold, snowing the whole time. So these are harsh circumstances, not to mention the fact that SS are there with rifles ready to shoot anyone who falls behind or who tries to break ranks. And, you know, if the SS didn't get you, then your fellow inmates get you. As Elie describes, waves of people. Waves of people. If you lost your footing, you were doomed. They would just trample right over you. So that gives you just a brief overview of how long they were there and what they were doing. I want to talk about these themes that we keep coming back to. The first one I'd like to talk about today is our old standby. Maintaining human dignity in the face of inhumanity and degrading circumstances. So in order to prove that theme, or in order to develop that theme, we look at the Jews and other inmates who face inhumane treatment and who cling to human dignity. And then we also look at examples where they lose their human dignity. Okay? And in this one, we've got examples of all three. All right? So their human dignity is under assault from the get-go. The SS calling them filthy, flea-ridden dogs. Terrible. They don't have the opportunity to even take care of their bodily functions. Remember Zalman, the guy that Elie knew from the factory, who is running alongside him and says, gosh, I have to go to the bathroom. Elie says, you can't stop. You absolutely cannot stop. He has a stomach attack. And the last Elie sees of him is him taking down his pants to use the restroom and being trampled underfoot and killed immediately. The SS didn't even have to shoot him. So there's all manner of horrible instances of their human dignity being under attack. And it all results, even at the beginning of the chapter, with Elie sort of explaining these human beings as machines. He describes himself as being dual. There's two of them. He said there's I and there's my body. And he hates his body because his body is the one that's keeping him from being able to do what he needs to do to stay alive. His foot, remember, is still very injured. He left the hospital before his period of recuperation was over. And he's starving. And he's weak, and he's cold, and he doesn't have a coat, and he's running through icy roads. Okay? So, all manner of things going on there. And he does describe them as, he describes himself and his fellow Jews as masters of nature, master of the world, because they're able to put mind over matter and will themselves to go on when they shouldn't have been. And I hope you noticed when they said that it was kind of the same terminology that Elie used to use for God. And that's the second time he sort of indicated that God's not there and that human beings are stronger than God. So they arrive at the brick factory on page 88, and we see more assaults on humanity. They're exhausted. They're tired. They sink down into the snow. They're forced into this brick factory, and there's a pileup of people who are crushed beneath. They stay there, and Elie and his father know that to fall asleep is going to mean to die. So they watch over each other. They are clinging to that human dignity, clinging to that family bond. But a lot of people don't have anyone to look out for them. And even when Elie tries to wake up a man who is sleeping, even when he's trying to wake up the guy who's sleeping, the guy says, just leave me alone. Don't. So there Elie is trying to be a good person and trying to help out. And the guy who's asleep is just ready to go. He says, forget it. Don't try to wake me up. Just leave me alone. So all manner of things to choose from there. I don't know if you noticed, too, in the crush, in the pileup, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I don't know if you noticed in the crush and in the pileup and in the brick factory, there are logs everywhere. And you've got people freezing to death, and there are logs. And no one tries to make a fire. I'm sure they wouldn't have been allowed to anyway. But the very thing that could deliver them from part of the torment they're facing is the logs that are right there the whole time. All right, so they've got the 24-hour march to Gleiwitz, and there's a barracks stampede. They're trying to get into the barracks, and this is the most bizarre part of the chapter. And they're so anxious to get in, they're pushing and pushing through this doorway. And I imagine maybe a double, like the size of a barn entrance maybe, But the crush of the thousands of people is so much that some fall and others trample over those, and then more fall and more trampled. And somehow Elie is stuck in this doorway in a stack of bodies. And he's smothered because people are on top of him, and he's on top of other people. He doesn't know whether they're alive or dead, whether these people beneath him and above him are alive or dead, because they've been trampled, he's been trampled. And he hears the voice of Juliet in the chaos that is that situation. And he can't believe that Juliet is okay down there. And he says, Are you all right? And Juliet says something to the effect of, yeah, I'm fine, but I'm worried about my violin. Remember, Juliet was the violin player who played in the orchestra when everyone was marching at Buna. And significantly, they were not allowed to play Beethoven. And so, Beethoven being a German composer, the musicians being Jews were not allowed to play Beethoven's music. So somehow he claws his way out of this pile of people. And if we go back to our theme, he's got to sacrifice a little bit of this human dignity in order to survive. If he's going to get out of that pile, he's got to get other people under him, alive, dead. He scratches and claws his way out. Apparently, Juliet does as well. His father does as well. During the night, everyone's sleeping, and he wakes up and he hears Beethoven. He says to this day, when he hears this particular piece of music by Beethoven, it transports him back. And it's significant that it's Beethoven because that's what Juliet was prohibited from playing. And it's significant that he plays it all night as a kind of in your face to the Nazis, right? You can do all this to me that you have done. You can deprive me of food. You can make me march. You can imprison me. You can take away my freedom. You can kill my friends and my family. But you cannot take away my human dignity. And he dies after having played the beautiful piece of music. So we've got the triumphs, and we've got people clinging to it, but we've got these horrible attacks on the human dignity of the inmates there. All right, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about was the theme of family bonds, okay? We've got the strength of family. That is how they are getting through, all right? At one point in the march, he's so tempted, Elie is so tempted just to stop running and to either be shot or to let people trample him. But he says, I can't do that to my father. I live for him, and he lives for me. So you see those family bonds getting him through. The only reason he keeps on going, right? And then you see he and his father working together to stay awake that night at the brick factory so that they don't freeze to death. And you have this example on page 90 and 91 of Rabbi Elie, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, but I'm not really sure how to say it. Rabbi Elie and his son. If you remember, Rabbi Elie says, is highly respected, very religious, great man. One of the few people in the concentration camp that everyone still called rabbi. So in the death march, he becomes separated from his son. And he comes in that night asking, has anyone seen my son? Has anyone seen my son? And Elie says, no, sorry, haven't seen him. And once Rabbi Elie leaves, he remembers, oh, wait a minute, I did see his son. I saw him at the front of the pack. And as I saw Rabbi Elie losing ground and going to the back, the son maintained his position in the front. In other words, the son was ditching his father. And Elie makes a prayer right there. He's so glad that Rabbi Elie doesn't know this, first of all, because that would crush him. Second of all, he makes a prayer to this God he no longer believes in and says, please don't ever let me do what Rabbi Elihu's son has done. So he knows that Rabbi Elihu and his son survived for 3 years in the concentration camp together. And despite that 3-year bond, despite the fact that they had been through so much together, the son put self-preservation ahead of his family bond with his father. And you can see how that theme kind of intersects with the human dignity theme. When does it become a situation of me first and only me? For some people, they're hitting that wall like Rabbi Elihu. Not Elie and his dad, though. But that is one of Elie's fears, okay? That he's going to face too much, so much that he just can't anymore do what he knows to be right. All right, guys? So as chapter 6 comes to a close, you think that you've seen the worst. I'm here to tell you, it gets worse. The next chapter, this train ride to Buchenwald, is horrible. So chapters 7, 8, and 9 go very fast. Our next video will be on chapter 7, and then the last one will be on 8 and 9 together. Okay, so keep reading. Hope you're doing well. Sure am anxious to see you. I don't know when that'll be, though. Maybe next year, huh? Okay, thanks. Bye.